Welcome to another deep dive into the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. I'm a lady of Westeros, and today we will be exploring a radical idea. Bran Stark, as the three-eyed raven, is more than just a green seer. Bran Stark is R'hllor, the Lord of Light made flesh. Just as in Christian theology, um, it speaks of God becoming man to experience humanity, to suffer, and to eventually save the world. Bran embarks on a journey of sacrifice, death, and resurrection, all leading to his final role as mankind's savior. The theory that Bran Stark is the god R'hllor is intriguing, but I'll admit very speculative. But I think it all hinges on interpreting certain aspects of R'hllor, like um, how R'hllor is kind of part of a collective myth, how Bran Stark's powers will come into play, how George R.R. Martin is obsessed with time loops, and it will come into play as well as Bloodraven and the Weirwood network. We will go into how it all ties Bran and R'hllor together. Um, and you can tell it's probably going to be a very lengthy conversation. But I will, during this conversation, try to stick mostly to the books and not so much the show. But every now and then the books will kind of like bleed in. It kind of can't be helped. Um, but we will also have to go over how I think that George R.R. Martin's Catholic upbringing is a key element to why I think that Bran Stark could be the god R'hllor, and how this all gives a big clue to Bran's fate and what role he will ultimately play in the upcoming books of Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring. Finally, we'll also go into how the saying, the dragon must have three heads, how it will pertain to Bran as R'hllor, and the ending of the Long Night. I'll also kind of go into how or what roles Jon and Dany will play in this final battle. So again, I'm sure you can like guess that it's going to be a long conversation. There's a bit to go over to try and bring all of this together as I see it, and hopefully make enough sense that y'all get what I'm trying to say. So if this turns into more than just one video, I'm sorry. I do hope that that's okay and that you understand, and we'll come back for more so that we can bring all of this together. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into the theory that Bran Stark is the god for lore. Starting off, I'd like to explain what I mean when I say that R'hllor is part of a collective myth. I believe that R'hllor is not just one distinct entity. Like R'hllor just works on this side of the world with the Red Priest and priestesses and all of that good stuff. I think that he is part of a shared entity that has put its fingers into many different puddles around the entire world, and influenced many different cultures. And Carl Jung, Jung, is how you spell his name. I'm not saying it right, I'm sure. But he came up with the theory of the collective myth, that our ancestors passed down this unconscious um, thing within us to try to understand the world around us and project images and archetypes um, onto certain things to understand us and consider it religion and parts of our culture. And by archetypes, I mean like, so things like the mother, the father, the hero, the shadow. Okay, there are many different ones throughout our own culture. There's like the hero's journey. If you like ever like dabbled into writing and stuff and you trying to figure it out, they always talk about the hero's journey is one form of writing you can do, where the hero has this thing and he has to like work his way through many different trials to become the hero. That like goes back all the way to like ancient Greece with like the story of Hercules and his 12 labors, all the way up into modern time with film and literature, with things like Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, or Harry Potter in the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. It's that archetype. There's also things like the creation myth, that in Christianity we believe that God created everything out of nothing with a big boom, spoke the word, and the universe was created. Norse mythology, the world was created by body parts of a giant. And then you have things like the flood myth, that like every culture around the world has a flood myth, from Christian beliefs with God washing it out and leaving only Noah and his family, to the Epic of Gilgamesh, with in the Mesopotamian, um, he wiped everything out with a flood. And even again in Greek mythology, Zeus at one point sends a flood and wipes out all of humankind except for two people to repopulate the earth. It's the collective myth. He thinks that all of these different similarities throughout the world aren't just coincidence. It's something like deep instilled in us, in our DNA, in our unconscious mind, that we kind of do that. Excuse me. And so we can apply the same collective myth theory to specifics of the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. Different faiths, such as the Lord of Light and R'hllor and the old gods, focus on key figures, key archetypes, like Azor Ahai and the Last Hero, the Long Night and the Battle of the Dawn. These are, again, I think, unconscious things that humanity in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire are doing, and it's a collective thing. It's one entity overseeing everything, but we interpret it according to the world around us. Over in episode Essos, it's more about battle and staying alive and fire and, oh my gosh, intensity. And so their god would be more intense with fire and all of that good stuff. And then you have across the Narrow Sea in Westeros, especially in the north with the old gods, it's all ice and cold, and but it's still, both of them are a battle between life and death, light and darkness. So I think that it all comes into play with the collective myth theory, and how Bran Stark, using the Weirwood net when he becomes the three-eyed raven, is able to tap into this, and with this system is able to go out and about and influence people through dreams, wolf dreams, and uh, the green dreams, and weirwood dreams, and visions in the flames, and the god whispering through the fires. Okay, I think that it is all Bran, and he's using the Weirwood net to move characters like Melisandre, Bran, himself as Bran Stark, putting himself into position so that he can get into the Weirwood net and do this to become this great entity. We're going to get into that. Um, but individuals like Melisandre could be just being influenced by Bran and interpreting him as a godlike being that reflects their culture, building a religion based on the encounters and these interpretations. I think that Bran, as the three-eyed raven, could easily be slipping into people's dreams as the old god whispering through the woods, okay? And the Lord of Light, again, shining his guidance and wisdom, um, for the faithful followers of the God of the Lord of Light, and leading them to where they need to be, positioning them into place, but all one entity, being again interpreted by man according to the world around them. And I think that's a really interesting thing. Now I'd like to discuss Bran, his time traveling ability. The Weirwood net allows Bran to interact with the past, as seen when he calls out to his father, Ned Stark, in the Dance of Dragons. It's like right after Ned and Howland Reed and their party has fought with Sir Arthur Dayne and Sir Gerald Hightower. And Ned hears Lyanna screaming from the Tower of Joy and turns and rushes toward it to go inside to get to his sister. And Bran calls out, "Father," because Bran's watching in his visions, form. And Ned, for a moment, like seems like he hears him. He turns around, like puzzled look on his face, like what was that? But at that moment, Bloodraven pulls Bran out of this vision and tells him that iconic little saying that the past is already written, the ink is dry. Stay too long where you don't belong, and you will never return. In the books, the actual dialogue between Bran and Bloodraven about the specific moment isn't really detailed. It kind of like, I guess, leaves it up. Is meant to leave it up to your imagination a little bit, and the show provides a better visual and gives us some dialogue to go with, while the book again forces us to like use our imagination. Um, but this experience, this vision, leaves some details again to the reader's imagination, and it lets us do things like this, I guess. So with this power, I think it implies that Bran could guide characters, the characters that we know and love, if he becomes more than just the wind. If he can do that, I don't see why he can't influence his past self as well. Using the Weirwood net, I believe that Bran Stark will create a closed time loop where he leads himself to his destiny. If we look at some of George's earlier work, especially this one story in particular, the second kind of loneliness is the book's name. I think that it will give us a lot of insight on where George is going with Bran's abilities. George R.R. Martin's work, The Second Kind of Loneliness, that came out in 1972, explicitly involves a little fly. I'm sorry. It explicitly involves time travels and time loops. In it, the protagonist, through time travel, experiences a situation where his actions in the future influence the past, leading to a predestined loop where every action that he takes ensures the loop continues. In the story of A Song of Ice and Fire, Bran's story, um, with his green seer abilities, especially in the Dance of Dragons hints at a form of time manipulation, or at least the perception that time isn't quite linear, that it's more of a spider web, or like the human brain synapses, how they all, it all moves. It's complex. I don't understand it quite myself, but I think that time's not quite linear for Bran, especially when he taps into the Weirwood net and uses his green seer abilities. So Bran's abilities to see into the past and possibly interact with it, as seen especially when he influences Hodor's mind from the future, suggests that there is a kind of time loop where past actions are influenced by future knowledge. Um, this is again much like the loop in Martin's earlier work, where the actions in one time affect another, creating this cycle that is like never ending. And I think that Martin's kind of like fascination with time, with destiny, and the consequences of actions is evident in both his sci-fi work and the fantasy stuff that he does, like Game of Thrones and Song of Ice and Fire. Um, and in A Song of Ice and Fire, Bran's journey could be seen as a time loop where it starts when Bran falls and starts himself on this journey. And much like when the protagonist in The Second Kind of Loneliness triggers the event that leads to his time travel loop, Bran might be subtly guiding his own destiny by influencing, again, events and people in the past to ensure that the cycle that leads to him becoming the three-eyed raven continues, and back to the present to fight the others. Um, just as the characters in Martin's time loop story might ensure their own existence or fate throughout their actions, Bran's journey could be fulfilling a loop where his actions as the three-eyed raven were always meant to happen, influenced every step of his life to reach this very point. He had to let himself fall and become broken so that he could become whole in a totally different sense. Martin's earlier works, they often explore how knowledge of one's fate can either doom or liberate them. Themes that resonate much with Bran's art. In A Song of Ice and Fire, the concept of a closed time loop could mean that Bran's destiny is not just about becoming the three-eyed raven, but about ensuring the survival of Westeros against the Long Night, this destiny to be the savior of mankind, a destiny that loops back to his initial visions and actions. Um, while not confirmed if Martin has to all right. Well, it's not confirmed. Martin was to dive deeper into Bran's capabilities when we get into the other books. When he hasn't confirmed anything, but we can like think about it, and hopefully he'll get the books out and we'll know for sure what's going on. But we might see in the later works, of Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring, um, more explicit time loop stuff where Bran influences actions um, throughout the past, maybe leading Lyanna Stark to do what she does at the tourney, being the mystery knight, and having Rhaegar having visions and hearing whispers of his own that leads him to Lyanna to create Jon Snow. I think we'll get more of that as Bran, as we get more Bran chapters in these later books. In essence, Bran's story could be seen as a sophisticated evolution of time loop concepts from George's earlier science fiction works. How over the last, since the 70s to now, George has had all those years to perfect it, to make it better. I tell my son, we talk about it with artwork and different things, that an artist sometimes has to do the same project over and over until it becomes that masterpiece that it is. And I think that George R.R. Martin, throughout his time and obsession with time loops and fantasy writing and science fiction and blending it all together, has made the ultimate masterpiece in time loops with Bran Stark.
Hey, can I say something really quick?
Go ahead.
I know I tend to work on the same art project over and over, and then it's like,
Yes, you do, until again you get it
know.
perfect, or at least as perfect
Yeah.
as you can
And
get.
and what look at Bella with her tongue out. I was talking to Grandma. I don't think she heard me, but I was like, I saw Bella was laying with her tongue out. With her tongue out, or German Shepherd.
She's really cute.
But you spoil her rotten.
I do.
Well, she's supposed to be.
They're pets.
Okay.
They're supposed to be spoiled.
Yeah. Okay, go back to what you were doing.
Bran Stark, before he can become the three-eyed raven, that uses the Weirwood network to influence the world to bring about the end of the long night, he will have to overcome the hidden trap that the Weirwood network, this system, really is. He will have to fight his way through this web and defeat, I think, like the lurking spider waiting within. It's there waiting to pounce on any greenseer that comes its way. We all know that the Weirwood network is an ancient network that spreads throughout, I think, the world, not just Westeros, but the world. There are other videos where I mentioned the black bark trees with the gold leaves over across the narrow sea, like over in Ashai and stuff. How I think they're like a mirror image of Westerosi Weirwoods, but it's one big collective. And I think that something within this collective is not the benevolent being that is truly there to teach Bran how to weave his way through time and space to become the next Green Seer. I think there's more to it. I believe that it's believed that Bloodraven, his role again is to serve as the three-eyed crow or raven, depending on the show or books, whichever one you want to call it, to guide Bran to his powers. However, I don't believe that Bloodraven is actually acting under his own authority. Okay, I think that he may be more of a puppet or a vessel for this more ancient being to use to again bring in his prey. Theories speculate that the longer one is connected to the Weirwood network, the more that they might lose their own identity, much like when they talk about warging. And if you're in the warg into the animal too long, you can lose yourself and lose yourself into the animal. It's the same with the Weirwood network, and it's kind of explained throughout. And I think that Bloodraven has been connected so long that this entity at this point has truly connected to him. There are things that are the roots are like woven through him and stuff, and he looks like a skeleton that's like just a husk, mummified almost. And the Weirwood system has tapped him dry of his knowledge, of his life force, and all of that. And I think that the Weirwood network is going to try to do the same thing to Bran. It's leading him in with sweet treats and potential knowledge, like the serpent with Eve. Here's some knowledge, you want it, and ooh, okay. And a lot of individuals take it, and I think Bran has got to overcome this again on this time loop destiny to become the three-eyed raven, to be able to use this Weirwood network and not become what Bloodraven is. I think that for Bran to really, again, truly become this, he has got to confront and destroy this entity, the whole fly or die. If he truly wants to become the godlike being that is going to be able to put everything into play to bring about the long night in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, he's going to have to overcome this entity and not get sucked into the trap of being trapped in this Weirwood network. This could involve like a mental or magical kind of like confrontation. I think of like Charles Xavier in the X-Men doing his mental battles. I think it might be something like that, so that Bran can take full control of this forest and gain uh, the ability to truly use the Weirwood network as it was meant to be used before this entity during some period throughout the history of A Song of Ice and Fire was corrupted and taken over by this entity. One of these little g gods, not the big G that I think Bran really is, and is set himself up on destiny to become. Cuckoo clock is going off, so my bird clock is probably going to go off in a minute too. Um, so forgive me if you hear the birds. But by overcoming this entity or this natural force, Bran could potentially free himself from being the puppet and become the master of this network, using its power in a manner that aligns with his own will for the greater good of humanity. And with full control, Bran might then be able to truly transcend to a state where he can see and influence events across different times and places, akin to like the god figure, or lore, which ties into his role in the series of the in-game events where a fly, I swear this fly is killing me today, where he potentially can understand and perhaps manipulate the flow of history against the threat of the others and get everyone into position where they need to be to bring about the end of the long night, to become this godlike figure that people throughout time and space refer to as their own different kind of gods. But it's again that overall collective myth theory thing where Bran, once he is able to defeat this, will be able to tap into the Weirwood network again as it should be to become this godlike figure. In conclusion, the idea of her lore as part of a collective myth speaks to the deeper archetype focused patterns or symbols that shape human thought, behavior, and even storytelling across culture and time. I believe that the world of A Song of Ice and Fire is no different from our own in that regard. If Bran, through the Weirwood network, has been able to influence people through visions and beliefs across time, then the religions of Westeros and beyond, whether they are the worshippers of the Lord of Light or the old gods, may simply be a collective interpretation of his influence. This would create that closed time loop, a self fulfilling cycle where Bran, knowingly or not, plays a divine role in shaping the past, the present, and the future. George R.R. Martin's fascination with time loops and destiny further supports this possibility, as his past works explore the paradox of actions influencing their own origin. If Bran is not only a witness to history, but also the one that is shaping it and leading it, then his ultimate challenge may not be guiding humanity toward victory in the Battle of the Dawn, but escaping this trap within the Weirwood net itself. Um, he has to be able to get out of it to end this loop and fulfill his destiny. Whether the network is a tool of enlightenment or a web of entanglement remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: Bran's his role in the greater game of fate is far more than passive. He is definitely one of the big players. He may very well be the key to both preserving and breaking this cycle, ensuring that the light of knowledge does not become the shadow of control. So we're almost at like the 30-minute mark. So I'm going to wrap it up for today's video. We will be going into George R. R. Martin's Catholic upbringing and how it influences his writing, and is one of the reasons that I think Bran is the God lore. So see you in the next video. And we will continue again to go into why Bran is lore. So until then, keep your candles lit and your fires burning, for the night is dark and full of terrors. Now you guys have made it this far, so go the extra mile and like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, have a great day and bye. Now you guys have made it this far, so go the extra mile and like, share, and subscribe.